It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
All right, Brian, so we've talked about what you can do before it's time for college. Like you can save, you can choose your degree, you can help educate your children. Let's talk about some of the things you can do while your child is in college. And this is kind of, you are the expert on this right now because you are literally living in this moment right now, right? So there are a few things you can do while your kid is in college to help pay for it. One of the very first things we talked about were tax credits.
Yeah, tax credits this came up recently. Like I said, I had all my family in town for my oldest daughter's high school graduation, and this came up because my sister-in-law was working through taxes, and as I've shared, I have a niece who's in college. And I'm kind of hoping that down the road she might go into the wonderful world of finance. She probably gets tired of me nudging her that direction all the time.
I can't imagine you telling her
I
that
know,
all the time.
I'm very opinionated about things. But here's the thing I was trying to explain when we were looking at the different tax returns. I said, look, we have to coordinate 529s, we have to coordinate the tax credits because there's two big ones out there. There's the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which is considered the better of the two because it gives you much more benefit. And then there's the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. And I wanted to kind of give the quick overview of what these two tax credits are, and then we'll kind of close it out with how does this integrate with a 529 plan, because hopefully we've all been saving. So these American Opportunity Tax Credits are very powerful because here's the maximum benefit. You can, on the American Opportunity Tax Credit, you can get a $2,500 benefit on $4,000 of expenses. And the reason it works out, that math works that way, is that it's a dollar for dollar credit on the first $2,000 you spend for college. And then it's a 25% expense on the next $2,000. So that's how you get to that $2,500 total credit. But you can imagine, so it doesn't, if you, at a minimum, there's no way in the world that you should do anything that blows up you getting to get this tax credit. Because remember, a tax credit's different than a tax deduction. A tax deduction means it lowers your income, and then when they calculate your tax rates, you're probably getting a 25 to 30% benefit off of it. A tax credit is a dollar for dollar reduction in your actual taxes. So this is a huge valuable benefit. So pay attention to that American Opportunity Credit. It is available for the first 4 years that you're in school. Now, the Lifetime Learning Credit, it's not as powerful. It's $2,000 maximum benefit, and the way it works out is it's 20% up to $10,000 of expenses. I said first 4 years on the American Opportunity Credit. Lifetime Learning Credit comes into account for somebody who maybe is going for graduate school, or you're an older person that says, hey, I need to go back to college to retrain myself on things. You can use that Lifetime Learning Credit, but it's going to be 20%, not the dollar for dollar or 25% of the next 2,000. And here's another thing that I think is interesting, and this is the part that happened with my sister-in-law and my niece, is we were trying to figure out who should take the credit. Who takes the credit? Does the student take the credit even if they're working out there full time, or do the parents who paid for it? And you do need to take this into account because the parent, in a lot of situations, they'll be able to take the full $2,500 because they have enough income to justify it. Whereas the child, because this was the case I had with my niece, she was only going to get a 40% refundable benefit because, when you don't make a ton of money, you usually get back all the taxes you paid, plus a little bit more if you have some of these credits, but you can only do up to 40%. So this was going to be like an $800 benefit to my niece, but it could be a $2,500 benefit to my sister-in-law. Pay attention to this part. The refundable matters. By the way, Lifetime Learning Credit, once again, it's just not as powerful because none of it can be refundable. So if you don't actually pay income taxes into the system, you're not going to get a benefit from this, so it's not refundable. Both of these have income phase-outs. For the American Opportunity Credit, $80,000 to $90,000 for single individuals. Married filing jointly is $160,000 to $180,000 is where those phase-outs are. For the Lifetime Learning Credit, it's a good bit lower. Single individuals, it's $59,000 to $69,000. For married filing jointly, it's $118,000 to $138,000. And then here's the big closeout on this. How does this all integrate into 529 plans? You can use both 529s and tax credits, but not for the same dollars. So that's why I always remind people, hey, if you are going to qualify, your income is below the threshold, you have a child that's in the first 4 years of school, make sure you leave about $4,000 of expenses, of qualified education expenses out there that's not reimbursed through the 529 plan, so you can actually use both. Because if you use all of your, maybe you did a great job of saving with the 529 and you have more than enough to pay for college, it's not a smart decision to pay for 100% of college with that 529, because there's a good chance that the government through tax savings could have paid for a portion of that and still giving you a great benefit. So make sure you're working through that compatibility and how to integrate that planning tool together.
So if I'm going to summarize what you just said, it sounds like the American Opportunity Tax Credit is slightly better, larger benefit, with higher income limits, but the lifetime learning credit is available for unlimited number of years. So you can use it more than just in those first 4. You can only claim one education tax credit per year. You can't do any double dipping on that, right?
Right.
And you can't double dip in terms of 529 expenses. So you have to use it for distinct expenses. So it takes a little bit of planning. This is probably something you want to think through, not on April 14th when you file your taxes, but probably back in August when you're actually paying for the college expenses, right? A little bit of forethought needs to go into it.
Yeah, and I think like packing a punch, like American Opportunity Credit, if you want to integrate that with a 529, you only have to leave $4,000 out there for the government to qualify for that credit outside of your 529 reimbursement. Yep. Whereas the lifetime learning credit, it's got to be $10,000 because it's 20%. So there's a big difference there on how much you have to leave not reimbursed from the 529.
All right, so we talked about tax credits, right? That's letting the government pay for a small portion of the cost of higher education. Another thing, and this is something that's like super, I mean, this is kind of the whole reason we're having this conversation, is financial aid. Now, rather than going through a deep dive on financial aid and specifically on the FAFSA, we want to point you to a resource. If you go to fyi.moneyguide.com, Daniel did a full write-up. FTE Daniel did a full write-up on everything you need to know about the FAFSA, what you need to know, how to fill it out, tripwires to make sure you watch out for. So I would encourage you, if you do have a student who's getting close to or preparing to go off to school and you're thinking about financial aid, whether it be on the needs-based or merits-based side, go read Daniel's blog post on the FAFSA, and it'll be hugely valuable to kind of walk you through all the things that you need to know.
Yeah, and a teaser, just because I think this is important to give a little bit of information on this, because I do encourage everybody to go to fyi.moneyguide.com to check out Daniel's deep dive. But a lot of you are probably saying, give us some of the breadcrumbs on how 529s and financial aid. I can tell you, Cliff Notes, 529s do have a direct impact on your financial aid calculation, whether it's the student or the parents having those assets. So a lot of you, a hack that you want to consider. Now, there's some caveats to this because it could impact the timing of this. And Bo, I don't know if you want to give how far you want to go on the breadcrumbs, but there is the grandparent 529 hack, and the fact that it doesn't, they don't ask you about grandparent assets, but here's the catch. Pay attention to when you actually use those benefits from the grandparents. It does roll through this FAFSA calculation, so you might want to wait until that junior and senior year. And we explain that. I think Daniel might even lay that out in his Your Complete Guide to FAFSA write-up on it. Might make sense to save those grandparents money for reimbursement in those second 2 years.
Yeah, another thing, this isn't a little grandparent hack. Since we're talking about grandparents, one of the things that I encourage my folks to do, right? If they ever want to make a contribution to my girls' 529s, maybe for birthdays or whatever, I live in the state of Tennessee. There's no state tax benefit for contributions they make. It would make a lot more sense for their grandparents to open up 529s in the state that they file taxes in and make contributions into there so they can get a tax benefit. So that way at least someone can get it. And if I kind of think through it, when my kid gets to college, I know those grandparent 529 assets won't be factored in the FAFSA calculation, and those will be the dollars we'll use for the last 2 years when it comes time for that.
So I shared that these are unique times. Everything just is getting more and more expensive. How in the world are we going to get our students through college or through whatever their education journey is? Because it doesn't, I had somebody post a comment that says education and college don't have to be the only path. So I just want you to always to be a lifetime learner. But it is one of those things I wanted us to kind of close out with some out-of-the-box ways that you can navigate this expensive cost of education in very creative ways. And we actually have some case studies right here at Abound Wealth as well as with my own relatives, and I was so impressed. Like my niece, she's a resident assistant.
That's
you know,
great.
and
Yep.
one of the things when you get paid to be a resident assistant, you get your housing paid for. There's a lot of benefits. There's out of the box thinking you can do. And like I said, my niece being a resident assistant has really lowered the burden of one of the most expensive costs for education, which is housing. She took advantage of, hey, there's a need at colleges to have students who are sophomores and beyond help the freshmen, and I think that's a very valuable thing. And then we have a case study here with your roomie for the summer.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have an intern right now who he's going to go back to get a graduate degree so he can sit for the CPA exam. Who would ever want to do that? But one of the things he figured out is that he can actually go be a graduate assistant, and it will cover his tuition for the one additional year he needs in that accounting major. So that's great. He's going to have a free year of school just from serving as a graduate assistant. So there are methods and mechanisms available to you to help offset the cost of college if you're willing to do a little bit extra.
And then we've shared this hack already, but I think it's worth mentioning. You know, your diploma when you graduate college, nobody ever asks you, hey, did you go all 4 years of that college, or did you
just matters the one that printed the paper.
Yeah, did you do community college first to kind of cut the edge off of the cost? Because a lot of states do, you know, community college is substantially cheaper than the 4-year relative, and that you can still transfer. Actually, they prioritize a lot of the community college transfers into the state programs, and your diploma looks exactly the same as everybody else. So that's a way to really cut the cost down dramatically. Also, and this is going to be a unique shout out to a crosstown rival. You know, because we're both Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, we are.
But work, study, and co-op. So I knew a lot of people went to Georgia Tech, and they graduated college without any student loans or other things, because it wasn't uncommon starting around sophomore, junior year, you'd go take a co-op at an employer where you would kind of do a semester on in school and then a semester working for this employer. And if they liked you, part of the incentivizing to you to come join their company was they would just pay for the rest of your college.
Amazing.
I knew a lot of people that were doing that. So work, study, and co-ops is a tremendous opportunity. Live off campus. You know, you can always, I know living in mom and dad's basement is not the greatest thing, but there's definitely, if you can cut the edge off through being a resident assistant or living off campus, you might save yourself some money. Back when I was in college, you know, there were a lot of paid note takers. You know, pay attention to. If you're a great student and you're meticulous about your note taking, consider, hey, are there services around town that help people who are dyslexic or just helps the kids that don't want to study as hard as you? There's ways to cut the edge off of getting paid for that. And then I even thought it was interesting. We'll get to tutoring and other things.
Sure.
I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's other ways you can do this as well with timing.
Another really interesting is you can take classes during the summer or winter semester. A lot of people don't realize that those semesters are actually offered on an abbreviated scale, meaning you can get through the classes quicker, and a lot of times it's lower cost. So if you have a few courses or credits that you need to knock out, rather than having to pay for an entire extra semester, you can take classes over the summer and winter. It's a great way to cut down the total cost of the education you're going to be receiving.
And then we have employer tuition reimbursement. Daniel was quick to share with us that he worked at Publix all through college, and they had a tuition reimbursement program for the grocery store chain.
Yep.
I know my own daughter works at Chick-fil-A, and they have a similar program. And if you take into account what the tuition reimbursement, it's actually a great, I mean, you really boost that hourly pay when you take into account the noble cause of tuition reimbursement. And then here's the last one is tutoring other college students. And I was very quick to share with the content team, I had to get tutoring in college. My senior year as an accounting major, I just couldn't make governmental accounting work. So I actually had to go hire a fellow student to help me on tutoring. And I actually, I'm actually proud of that. You know, looking at how our government is run and stuff now, I'm like, maybe I have too much common sense that governmental accounting course just never kicked in or made sense that I needed to get a little extra help on that. But so if you're great at some of those things, feel free to help other students, and you can even get paid to do that and help cut the edge off of cost.